Did you know that if your neighbor wins the lottery, your odds of going bankrupt actually goes up? Like 6.5%. Not theirs, yours. There's research behind this. Researchers at the Federal Reserve tracked more than 7,000 lottery prizes over a 10-year period. When somebody won a prize roughly equal to about the median income, the bankruptcy filings amongst their neighbors jumped up to 6.6%. By the way, what's the median income? Is this $1 million prize? No, it's the 50th percentile of income. In the US right now, it's about $80,000. So why would that hurt the neighbors if somebody won? They didn't even win a dime, right? It gets better, by the way. For every additional $1,000 in prize money, bankruptcies amongst the neighbors increases an additional 2.4% in the years that follow. So how does your neighbor winning money cause you to go broke? Because that sounds pretty ridiculous to me, but it's the stats. Once you understand the answer, because we dug into this deep, looked at a bunch of other studies, you're going to see why this thing called sudden wealth can be dangerous to your family, maybe to your kids, and why visible wealth can actually make you a target while you're still alive. And there are 3 things that I'm going to show you. Number 1, why money can disappear even when somebody receives a life-changing amount. 2, why leaving an inheritance outright to your children may create more risk than protection for them. And 3, why the same visible wealth that causes people to compete with you can also make lawyers and plaintiffs start looking at you like a payday. This sounds like 3 separate problems, but they're not. They're all driven by the same thing. Visible wealth changes behavior, period. It changes the behavior of the person who receives it. It changes the behavior of the people around them. And it changes the behavior of people who may want to take it from them. So let's go back to the lottery winner. Researchers in the Netherlands studied a lottery that randomly awarded money to households on the same street. It's like a postmark lottery. One side of the street wins, the other side doesn't. So imagine you live in a neighborhood and the other side of the street wins the lottery. It's kind of wild. But what do you think people immediately go out and buy when they get that kind of windfall? Statistically, I know that real estate's number 1. Most of the time they go out and buy a new house, but they're in the neighborhood. And this isn't huge amounts of money. So it's the next thing they do, new cars. So on one side of the street, these people that won the lottery, what did they do? They went out and bought a bunch of new cars, way more than normal. Well, they won the lottery, of course. But what do you think the other side of the street did? They also bought new cars, but they didn't win the lottery. Studies have shown that when one household in a neighborhood wins and buys a new car, the neighbors become far more likely to buy new cars for themselves over the following months. Their income didn't increase. Their old car didn't stop running, like it wasn't that reason. They simply saw something. Hey, I see my neighbor's new car sitting in that driveway, and suddenly what they already owned no longer felt good enough. It's called lifestyle inflation. That's how it usually begins. Nobody sits down and says, I think I'm going to destroy my financial future today. It starts much more quietly. Someone else gets a bigger house, get a new car, take an expensive vacation, they post it all over social media. And without realizing it, you start adjusting your life to reach somebody else's balance sheet. There's an economist, Lutmer, and he found that after controlling for your own income, having higher income neighbors, get this, is associated with lower levels of happiness. Think about how crazy that is. My neighbors are wealthier, and I feel more miserable because of it. Nothing in your life actually got worse. In fact, you may have gone to a nicer neighborhood, or your neighborhood's improving their stuff. Your income can literally stay the same. Your home is the same home. Your family's still healthy. But the minute that person next door starts pulling ahead, you begin to feel as though you are falling behind. So what the heck is a tax and asset protection attorney? I've been a tax attorney for close to 30 years. Why am I talking about lotteries? Well, let's forget about lottery winners for a moment and make it more applicable. Let's talk about your kids. Let's say you pass away and leave your kids a substantial inheritance. Pick one. Let's say it's your son. He does what feels completely reasonable. The number one thing all lottery winners do is, number one thing people that inherit a bunch of money they do, they go out and they buy your dream house. You know, there's actually a show called My Lottery Dream House on cable. I've seen it a bunch of times. Guys, people win the lottery and they immediately go out and buy a house they can't afford. So they buy, your son, let's just say, he buys a house in a neighborhood he always wanted to live. And here's the part that nobody warns about. He didn't just buy a new house. He bought a new peer group, new neighbors. Remember what happened when one person in the neighborhood wins the lottery? He just moved into a neighborhood full of them. He moved into a community that may have an entirely different definition of normal, right? The neighbors now, they all drive Range Rovers, BMWs, Mercedes. The kids' friends are going to Europe for spring break. Somebody remodels the kitchen, somebody puts in a new pool, you see it. The families in this neighborhood, they have their favorite restaurants and they belong to different clubs. They spend differently because they earn differently. And now your son is being pulled into that same current without the income. Nobody's telling him, hey, spend the inheritance, because nobody needs to. The pressure is already there. So let me ask you a question. If your children inherited everything tomorrow, would they know how to handle it? Would they know how to protect it? Would they know how to invest it? Would they live off of the income, or would they just start spending it down? Would that inheritance quietly become a more expensive house, more expensive car, more expensive lifestyle that eventually consumes everything? And that is the first major risk of sudden money. The person receiving it may not be prepared to handle it. There's even a term that I ran across that's used for the emotional disruption that can accompany a sudden windfall. It's called sudden wealth syndrome. And it's real. People experience anxiety, guilt, isolation, identity problems, and fear over how to manage that money. Psychologically, it's twice as painful to lose money than it is to make it, the joy of making it. It's kind of weird. You just gave somebody a big windfall and immediately they have anxiety because they're afraid of what they're going to do with it because they don't really have a plan. And this is where we need to bust one of the most repeated financial myths out there on the internet, by the way, because you probably heard that 70% of lottery winners, they go broke. And it gets repeated all the time, and they apply it to NFL people and everything else. Like all these people that make money, they all go broke. It doesn't appear to be real. It traces back to some comment that was made decades ago at an organization of a bunch of economists. The organization that even said it's not based on research. It was just an offhand comment, but it got repeated a whole bunch. But don't make the mistake that thinking the real data is any more reassuring. Like there's another study that looked at 35,000 winners of the Florida lottery. About 5.5% filed for bankruptcy within 5 years. And you're like, oh, 5.5 doesn't sound really as dramatic as 70%. But compare it with normal bankruptcy rates over the similar period. A person's odds of going bankrupt over about a 5-year period is less than 1%. Winning the lottery literally caused that to go up 500%. 500%. And there's more kind of bizarro, freaky data that makes the point. But I don't want to give you only half the story. It's not all doom and gloom, because not every study found that winners lost their money. There was actually a study that I came across from Sweden, where they looked at over 5,000 lottery winners using approximately 20 years of tax records. And the winners in Sweden generally preserved most of their wealth for long after a decade. What's different? And I looked at this, I'm reading all these studies, and I think the explanation is because Sweden provides a much stronger social safety net. Healthcare, retirement, and other fundamental needs are less likely to consume up that windfall. Like you make a mistake, it's a far more forgiving society. Money's not expected to solve every possible medical emergency or a retirement shortfall or a family crisis for the rest of the winner's life. It takes that little bit of that pressure off. Now, I'm not telling you, hey, Sweden's better, but I'm just saying it's kind of beside the point. The lesson is that sudden wealth appears to work better when the recipient has a financial floor beneath them. And by the way, you can build that same kind of floor for your family, which is the direction I would go. And you're going to say, like, how could I become Sweden? Right? We don't have that in this country. Well, you can actually do it with a trust. It's something called Heirs standard. Everybody knows that works in this. That's a trust professional or fiduciary. It's a very common term, Heirs standard. And I'm not talking about any crazy trust. I'm talking about a plain old vanilla living trust. And if you put Heirs standard in it, it will get the job done if you use the right company to draft that trust. Heirs stands for health, education, maintenance, and support. It's going to provide the baseline. So instead of handing your kids, for example, a huge lump sum, $1 million, hoping they make good decisions, a trust will authorize distributions under those Heirs categories over time: health, education, maintenance, support. They need to go to school, here's that. You have problems with housing, here's money to help make sure you have shelter over your head. You're having difficulty making enough money to cover for yourself and your family, here's money. And you could add in other provisions that you see fit for perhaps distributions at certain ages. Like, hey, give them 25% of the money when they hit the age of 40. Or upon reaching a milestone, hey, you buy your first home, we'll match whatever down payment you put. You could put that stuff in. Or you get married, $10,000. In the meantime, the trust helps pay for things like your health care. It can help pay for education. It can help pay for reasonable housing and living expenses. It can support the beneficiary without giving that person unrestricted access to the entire inheritance on day one. Can they buy the Rolls Royce or Lamborghini or a new home? Probably not. But will they have a huge advantage to having the basics covered? Absolutely. Plus whatever you want to add. Maybe it's travel. Hey, I want to make sure you leave the country and go look at other places once a year. The trustee will provide to you this amount of money to go on a 2-week vacation outside the United States so you can see other cultures. Maybe it's incentives to do certain things. Hey, I really want you to be involved in the church and we'll sponsor you to do mission work once a year, blah, blah, blah. You have a ton of different options. And let me stop here, because people often hear this and say, I don't want to control my kids from the grave. That's not what this is about. I'm not telling a 50-year-old child what kind of shoes they can buy. What you are doing is preventing one bad marriage, one big lawsuit, one addiction, one failed business deal, or one period of reckless spending from wiping out everything you spent a lifetime building. And that's very different. The trust creates the floor. Like Sweden, you're going to get better results. It can cover legitimate needs while protecting the remaining principal from creditors, lawsuits, divorce, and the pressure to keep up with the neighbors. There's friction on getting that money. And the inheritance research shows why the structure matters and why it works. Research from Ohio State University found that Americans save only about half of what they inherit on average. Half. It gets spent. They don't know. Peer pressure. Immediately go out, I got money, what am I supposed to do with it? Buy a new watch, a new car, this, that. Almost 30% of the recipients had a negative savings rate within 2 years. Negative. A third of these folks not only went through the money in 2 years, but went on a lower trajectory. They spent the inheritance and they just kept on going. You buy the Lamborghini, guess what? You got to maintain that thing and it's expensive. You buy the new house, you got to maintain it, it's expensive. Straight on down. A Danish study found a similarly troubling pattern. After a sudden death in the family, the heirs that they studied, the net worth went up. And then it gradually returned to essentially the same financial trajectory it had been on before the inheritance. It took 9 years for that inheritance to be gone completely. Whoa, average 9 years. And that should tell you something. This isn't just about Americans. This is a psychological thing that goes on with human beings. A lump sum does not automatically change someone's financial direction in a positive direction. In fact, it often accelerates the direction that they were already heading. Good habits become more powerful. Bad habits become even more expensive. And when siblings inherit together, oh my gosh, the neighbor effect I was talking about earlier, from somebody who wins the lottery and the neighbors are all trying to keep up with them, it shows up inside your own family. One sibling says, hey, what did you use the money for? I redid my kitchen, or I bought a new truck, or I took a really expensive vacation. What did you do with your money? And they're like, oh man, nobody says I'm competing with you, but that same pressure that spreads through a neighborhood can spread through a family. Visible wealth changes behavior over and over again. And this is why a properly designed living trust can provide two critical benefits. First is control. You determine how and when the inheritance reaches your beneficiaries instead of dropping a pile of money on their laps and hoping for the best. The second is privacy. A will goes through probate, which is a public record. That means the will, the filings, the assets, the identities of the beneficiaries, they get to be part of a public record. If you use a living trust, you can avoid that. Your family's inheritance remains private. Your neighbors do not need to know. Distant relatives do not need to know. Your kids' new friends, they don't need to know. And the person searching the court records for wealthy families at night, hey, they don't need to know. But so far, we've only talked about the danger to the person receiving the money. Let's talk about the danger to the person who already has it. Because the same visible wealth that causes one person to try to keep up with another can also cause another person to try to take it. Coveting works in two directions. Some people see success and they want to match it. Others see your success and they want to take it. And this is where estate planning and asset protection, they collide. Look at how aggressively litigation is marketed today. Legal service providers spend billions with a B of dollars buying advertisements. You see lawsuit ads on TV, you hear them on the radio, you see them online. I can't turn on my news, sponsored by, such and such, personal injury lawyers. You see them on billboards. I drove home. I saw 29, I live in Las Vegas. I went from the Strip to my house, 29 billboards for lawyers. You cannot drive through most cities for 10 minutes without seeing an attorney promising to get you a massive check. In a wreck, need a check? We only get paid if we win. And it's not always the law firm's own money funding the lawsuits. There's third-party litigation finance. That's a multi-billion-dollar income industry on itself. Outside investors fund cases in exchange for a portion of a future settlement or judgment. Think about what that means. Litigation can now be treated like an investment. Someone else provides the capital, someone brings the lawsuit, and everyone involved expects a return. At the same time, verdicts keep getting larger, so-called nuclear verdicts. These are verdicts of more than 10 million or more have increased. They've doubled in the last few years. Awards exceeding 100 million or more are becoming way more common. Some individual verdicts are now reaching into the billions, and it's gone up multiples. Part of this is often described as what you call social inflation. Jurors are constantly exposed to massive settlement numbers, enormous jury awards, advertisements telling them that somebody deserves a huge check. And over time, those numbers begin to feel normal. A $10 million verdict isn't shocking anymore. When I was a little kid, you heard $1 million, you thought that was just the biggest thing. A $100 million demand no longer sounds impossible. It's the same psychological recalibration we saw with the lottery winner's new car. People see a number often enough and their definition of reasonable begins to change. What's reasonable for me to get? My neighbor got this, I'm getting that. I saw this, I want that. Only now, instead of standing in a driveway, they're sitting in a courtroom. So here's the pattern and interrupt I want you to try. Go online, search your own name, look at the county recorder, look at the Secretary of State, look at court records, look at a property database. What would a plaintiff find? Go put your name, type your name into an LLM, use Claude or ChatGPT or one of those and start saying what it can find on you. Is it going to find your house, your rental properties, your businesses, your vehicles? Could somebody estimate your net worth tonight without ever having to speak to you? For many successful people, the answer is yes. They spent decades accumulating assets, and then they place every dang one of them into their own name. And their success, that becomes basically a public roadmap. Once somebody sees that roadmap, they know where to go looking for a payday. Remember, some people see the new car and they want to buy their own. Other people see a new car and they say, I want that one. This is why asset protection is not simply creating an LLC, corporation, or trust. Those are valuable. Insurance is valuable. Yes, a trust can be valuable. But if your structure is poorly designed and your entire financial life still remains visible, you're still going to look like an attractive target. You need security through obscurity. You need privacy. Proper asset protection planning combines legal separation with privacy. Different assets, different entities. Risky assets like real estate, you do not have a bunch of cash in there. You don't have your brokerage account in there with a rental property. Something happens to that rental property, they're taking that brokerage account. You separate them. You got to get your personal name removed from public-facing ownership whenever you can. You don't want people to see what you own. Control, you preserve. You can keep that. But ownership and liability get divided up, and you want privacy. And let me be very, very clear. We're not talking about hiding assets illegally. It's not about deceiving your creditors, doing anything untoward. No. And it's not about moving assets after you're getting sued. Or if you see, oh gosh, I have this liability, oh nuts. You can't do it. It's about structuring things in advance. In advance to all that. So you're not advertising your balance sheet to every tenant, creditor, claimant, business adversary, ex-spouse, ex-business partner, or contingency fee attorney who knows how to use a computer. You want to be a difficult target to find. And once found, you want to be a difficult target to collect against. I'll put it this way. You're in the neighborhood and the new car is in your garage and you're not telling everybody, hey, I got a Rolls in the garage. They can't see it. They're not going to try to compete with it. You put that Rolls right out there in front of the house, right in that driveway, and everybody sees it. Two things, they're going to try to strive for it, or they're going to try to take it. And what we're trying to do is take that away. So that is what proper planning is designed to accomplish. Give you control, isolate, and privacy. So let's bring this all together. Studies show that visible wealth changes behavior in people, period. Both for the recipient and those who see how the wealth is held and used. It changes how your heirs spend. It changes how your neighbors behave. It changes how relatives treat one another. And it changes how lawyers, creditors, and claimants evaluate you as a target. If you're thinking about what you will leave behind, you need a properly funded living trust that gives your family privacy and provides reasonable controls over how the inheritance is used. A HEM standard can absolutely help create that financial floor similar to Sweden without handing a beneficiary unrestricted access to everything at once. And if you're thinking about protecting what you've already built, you need an asset protection plan that does more than just place LLC after the name of your business. It needs to separate liabilities, it needs to preserve control, and it needs to stop you from unnecessarily advertising your wealth to the world. And I'm sure you, like most people who hear this information, realize how important having a plan is. But where should you start? Well, you're here. Knowledge is always a great start. You get a start. So subscribe to this channel and increase your knowledge. I post several videos a week on topics just like this. Second, Anderson, we've been teaching the tax and asset protection workshop for close to 30 years. This is a free one-day event where you'll learn about trusts, LLCs, corporations, how to get your name off the public record, use privacy, tax planning to reduce your bill, and do estate planning. Absolutely free. I'll put a link to register for one of our events in the show notes. Again, we teach them about every week, absolutely free. Join us for one of those. Lastly, if you want to speak to someone about your specific situation, you can just type consult down in the comments. Or you can use the link in my show notes and my team will create a blueprint for you of what a good plan for you might look like. Because being wealthy is not the danger. Being visible without a plan is the issue. I'll see you in the next one.